Okay, well, welcome to the Appropriations Committee. My name is Anna Wishart, and I represent Legislative District 27, which is Southwest Lincoln. I serve as Vice Chair of this committee, and we're going to start by having the members do self-introductions, starting with my far right.
Steve Erdman, District 47.
Lauren Lippincott, District 34.
Tony Vargas, District 7.
Mike McDonald, LD5, South Omaha.
Christy Armendariz, District 18.
Great. Assisting the committee today is Corey and our committee clerk, and fiscal analyst Kenny Boggs. And our page today is Ella. If you are planning on testifying today, please fill out a green testifier sheet located on the on the side of the room and hand it to the page when you come to testify. If you will not be testifying but want to go on record as having a position on a bill being heard today, there are yellow sign-in sheets on the side of the room where you may leave your name and other pertinent information. These sign-in sheets will become exhibits in the permanent record after today's hearing. To better facilitate today's hearing, I ask that you abide by the following procedures. Please silence your cell phones. When hearing bills, the order of testimony will be introducer, proponents, opponents, neutral, and closing. When we hear testimony regarding agencies, we will first hear from a representative of the agency, and then we will hear testimony from anyone who wishes to speak on the agency budget request. When you come to testify, please spell your first and last name for the record. Before you testify, be concise. We request that you limit your testimony to 5 minutes or less. Written material may be distributed to the committee members as exhibits only while testimony is being offered. Please hand them to the page for distribution when you come up to testify. If you have written testimony but do not have 12 copies, please raise your hand now so the page can make copies for you. And I will say as well, our committee, some members will be coming and going. That is because they may have other bills and other hearings that they need to get to. With that, we will begin today's hearing with the Agency 5, the Supreme Court. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Senator Wishart and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Mike Heavican. Mike is spelled M-I-K-E, and Heavican is spelled H-E-A-V-I-C-A-N, and I am the Chief Justice of the Nebraska Supreme Court. I will speak first about our general fund carryover appropriation and then about transferring funds from the probation program cash fund. Corey Steele, the state court administrator, will follow me to discuss our 6 mid-biennium budget requests. Let me say at the outset that we do not support the governor's recommendation to reduce general fund carryover by $10 million, nor do we support the transfer of $7.5 million from the probation program cash fund to the general fund. We started the current biennium with a plan. That plan was the result of several years of working with this committee and its chairman at the time to move away from the use of unobligated general fund appropriations carried over between fiscal years. This is not a new topic. As you recall, we have specifically reduced carryover on 3 occasions, $12 million in 2019, $10 million in 2020, and $8.5 million in 2021. In addition, and with your approval, $2.4 million from the base appropriation of juvenile probation was moved to implement the results of a salary study for court personnel. Close to $3.5 million of carryover was used last fiscal year to pay for the 15% provider rate increases approved by the legislature. And $12 million of carryover was transferred from the juvenile probation to court operations to complete the project I described in the State of the Judiciary address, that is to outfit every Nebraska courtroom with state-of-the-art technology. In my testimony before you last year, I said that continuing to use carryover is not sustainable. We requested that our carryover be taken away and our base budget adjusted to continue current operations. Instead, the decision was made to use carryover yet again this biennium at was the plan. With the PSL you approved, carryover is being used as follows. $6.4 million for fiscal year 24 and $6.7 million for fiscal year 25 to implement the salary survey for administrative and probation personnel, which you'd already approved. $3.6 million for fiscal year 24 to sustain the 15% increase given to service providers used by probation for yet another year, and approximately $950,000 each fiscal year to expand problem-solving courts in Platte and Sarpy counties, and approximately $450,000 each fiscal year for needed IT and judicial branch education personnel. Before concluding this part of my remarks, now is a good time to answer the question as to why the carryover appropriation was continued after all these attempts to reduce it. As you know, probation pays for services such as substance abuse treatment and transitional living for adults, family-based therapy, and out-of-home placements for juveniles. These and many other services are provided by host organizations. And if it isn't obvious, where we have the carryover is the probation side of our budget. The other side of the budget, the court side of the budget, is all salary, and we carry over very little for that particular part of the budget. So for adults, that is adult probation, although the probation population has remained steady in recent years, expenditures for service have not increased significantly. Our best explanation for that is Medicaid expansion has made it possible for more people to access the help that is needed, and by paying for it that way. For juveniles, there are two primary reasons. First, there are not enough services and facilities to meet the needs of Nebraska's juveniles, hence we haven't spent some of that money. The push by probation and many others to develop these services and facilities has been challenging at best. Once established, expenditures on services will increase. Due to the pandemic, the juvenile population on probation decreased. That was several years ago. However, as I stated in my address to you 2 weeks ago, the State of the Judiciary address, the juvenile population has now increased by 25% in just the last year. So that reason for carryover is disappearing. In other words, we are starting to spend the carryover from juvenile probation. To conclude, the legislative plan for this biennium is to use general fund carryover again for approved projects and initiatives. Based on that decision, we went forward. Our latest projections before the governor's recommendation estimates on the unobligated general fund balance of approximately $2.8 million as of June 30th, 2025. That's what we would have left over without, if the governor did not take any of the money we have carried over. Quite a reduction from the $33.5 million as of June 30th, 2023. In other words, we are spending it down. For all intents and purposes, our unobligated carryover is estimated to be gone. I say this to once again remind you that since carryover funds will be gone, our base appropriation for 2026-27 biennium will have to be increased significantly, not for new projects, but just to continue the status quo. And we're looking at double-digit increases just to get our base back to what we were authorized to spend. When we were informed of the governor's $10 million carryover reduction proposal, our first question was, if that carryover reduction was adopted, how will we make it to the end of the biennium? The answer from our standpoint was to use the probation program cash fund. In fact, our latest projection estimates that if the $10 million carryover is cut, we would need approximately $7.2 million from that cash fund to make it to the end of the current biennium. That brings me to the second portion of my remarks, the proposed $7.5 million transfer from the probation program cash fund to the general fund. Just so you're aware, the governor's staff did not consult with us or inform us of this proposal prior to the introduction of LB 1413. The probation program cash fund is codified in Nebraska Stat Section 2262.07. That section states that the fund is to be used to enhance programs to, quote, address a probationer's vocational, educational, mental health, behavioral, or substance abuse treatment needs, unquote. The statute was created in 2003 to directly benefit those sentenced by the court to a term of probation to pay fees into the fund. Probationers pay a one-time $30 enrollment fee and a $25 per month fee during their term of probation. In return, a variety of services are paid that increase successful completion of probation as an alternative, and I must say a less expensive alternative to incarceration. If a probationer is unable to pay, services are still made available. In other words, the money has been collected from struggling probationers trying to turn their lives around. To now sweep it into the state's general fund would be a betrayal of this legislature's commitment to some of our state's poorest, most vulnerable individuals. Unlike many other cash funds, the probation program cash fund does not currently allow for transfers to the general fund. There is a reason for that. The fund has been seen for years as serving an important function for the judicial branch, unlike some executive branch cash funds that regularly transfer revenue to supplement the general fund. It should also be noted that the governor's proposal did not take into account our future plans for the fund. Before I describe those plans, let me explain how the fund reached its current balance of $12 million. Keep in mind the balance has not always been that high. At the beginning of 2017, the balance of the fund was below $1.5 million. That balance has increased for several reasons. I mentioned one reason earlier in my remarks concerning adults and Medicaid expansion. In other words, we were able to pay for a lot of services through the Medicaid expansion that would otherwise have come from the cash fund. The other major reason is our technology plans. Probation currently has a case management computer system that records and tracks each probationer's data and progress while on probation. 2 years ago, probation contracted with an IT company. The goal was to significantly enhance data that could assist probation officers in planning and monitoring programs and activities that promoted successful outcomes for each probationer. The project was to be paid for from the cash fund at an estimated cost of $6 million. Although a good result from the project was a plan that can guide future system enhancements, the contractor could not meet our expectations and the contract was ended. Completion of that project would have significantly reduced the probation cash fund balance. As many of you know, Justice, that is Justice, that's our acronym for the court's case management computer system used in every Nebraska county. As I mentioned in the State of the Judiciary address, the justice system is held together with baling wire and bubble gum. A new system is needed. Probation's IT requirements will have to be fully integrated into any new system. The fund for this system will have to come from multiple sources to reduce the need for general funds. One of those sources will need to be the probation cash fund, or that was our plan. In other words, we have plans for the cash fund. The state of Arkansas is currently embarked on building a new court case management system with an estimated cost of $40 million over a 3-year period. In 2019-2020, the state of North Carolina purchased an off-the-shelf court case management system and enhanced all of their courtrooms across the state with technology at a cost of $85 million. In other words, this costs a lot of money. Now, we've already done the enhancement of technology, so that wouldn't be part of our new spending on an enhanced case management system, but we would anticipate that any new case management system here will cost at least as much as it did for Arkansas. To conclude, the legislature's budget for the current biennium will significantly decrease our unobligated general fund carryover, basically using all of it. If $10 million of that carryover is taken now, that plan is disrupted and another funding source must be found. That source is the probation program cash fund, but that funding source is severely reduced if $7.5 million is transferred from the fund. And at that point, we're out of options. In addition, our technology plans would be pushed even farther down the road. This does not even address the next biennium, where the adjustment to our base to maintain just the status quo would need to be even higher if these two proposals were adopted. The bottom line is the governor's proposals cannot be adopted without consequences. It can't all be done. Our situation is not an example of hoarding. This is not a situation where a one-time cash grab would still leave the judicial branch budget basically in good shape. What if our estimates are wrong? What if you leave the current plan for the biennium intact? Don't adopt the governor's proposals, and toward the end of the biennium, there is still carryover. We are more than willing to continue working with you next session to prevent that from happening while you craft the budget for the next biennium. As I stated, continuing use of carryover and not adjusting the base budget is simply not sustainable. I'll end with this comment. If the overall goal is transformative property tax relief and you want the judicial branch to contribute to that goal, we have a suggestion: transfer county-based clerks of the district court to state government. They are currently paid for by county property tax dollars. If the legislature can shift community college funding away from property taxes, then it can shift funding for the district court clerks. We've repeatedly introduced legislation offering variations of that concept. Over the last 10 years, a bill to accomplish a small part of such a transfer is pending in the Judiciary Committee now, and we thank Senator Dorn for sponsoring that. A rough estimate of the transfer of all of the district court clerks is approximately $25 million. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. Again, Corey Steele will address you on specific biennium requests, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief
That you have.
Justice. Any questions from the committee? Senator Dorn.
On page 5, you talked about the probation program cash fund. And I believe down there, farther down, it says that in your opinion, it couldn't be used, and maybe Mr. Steele's going to answer this more, but in your opinion, it could not be used for a general fund transfer.
Not as the statute reads now. It says it's supposed to be used for probation services. I assume you can change statutes, but.
Senator Delver.
Yeah, thank you for coming, Chief Justice Advocate. The question is, you had stated that the governor's office didn't talk about the second ask of the 7. Did they talk about the 10, the first ask?
Well, nobody talked to me about it, but I assume they talked to Corey about it.
They did. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Senator Erdman.
Thank you, Senator Wishart. So if you'd help me, thanks for coming, by the way. How much would it be a savings to the counties if we transfer the district courts to the state? Do you have an idea what that is?
About $25 million. That would be the whole thing. The bill we have pending now is just to take the ex officio clerks of the district court, and those are in the really small populated counties where the clerk of a county is the 3 or 4 or 5 different things, including a clerk of the district court. And in some of those counties, there are very, very few, and you're familiar with some of those counties, there are very, very few cases filed in the district. In most of the rest of the counties, you have elected district court clerks. And our biggest ones, obviously, are Douglas and Lancaster counties, both of which have had recent turnovers in their offices. Are one of the bills we had prepared some years back came with a plan that you would not take them all over at once. People who held those elective offices could hold them until they died or retired or blah, blah, blah. And at that point in time, the state would take them over.
Okay, thank you.
And we, if you're interested, we've got a study that National Center for State Courts did about 5 years ago about how to do it and why to do it.
Thank you.
Senator Vargas.
Chief, thank you very much for being here. And also thank you and the Supreme Court for doing its part, and probation for reducing the carryover proactively over the years. We've had a lot of conversations about the base. It's helpful. Not every agency or entity does that. I think it's a good practice. Question about, we also often don't get people telling us ways that we can save money by passing a bill. And since that bill is not appropriations, will you remind me, and maybe this is something that Mr. Steele can give us information on, what was the opposition? Why hasn't this bill moved?
You're talking about the clerk of the district court?
Yes,
No.
yeah. the 20
Well, to begin with, as you know, somebody's got to prioritize a bill, and nobody's just really been very interested in this. Moving the clerks of the district court essentially away from county government into state government is not a new idea. It goes back at least to the 1980s, and I have letters from to Chief Justice Gravocious saying we have to get these clerks of the district court essentially into the rest of the court system. And when Chris Beitler was a senator, he had numerous bills to do this, and they just never got passed. People don't like change. And every time we introduce one of these bills, the clerks of the district court come in and they talk about how awful it would be, and they're all going to lose their jobs, even though we structured those bills so they would not lose their jobs. And it was never anybody's priority, and they never got any legs.
Any other questions? Okay, I have a couple,
Mhm.
Justice. So you spoke about the probation case management computer system,
Mhm.
and that that contractor did not meet expectations.
Right.
So what is the plan and the cost for upgrading that computer system?
Well, so now the plan is that needs to be integrated into our court case management system. It's not right now. So our plan now would be, I spoke in the State of the Judiciary's speech about we need a new case management system for the courts. And our plan would be to integrate probation into that system. So the improvement that we had tried to make and had allotted over $6 million to do that from the cash fund, those folks just couldn't do it. So we didn't spend that money, but we would use that money now as part of the upgrade of the case management system.
And you gave some reference to other states' costs in terms of upgrading their systems. What are we estimating the cost would be for?
Well,
Nebraska?
we haven't put this out for bid or
Okay.
anything like that, but we understand, and I've had a lot of questions after the State of the Judiciary speech, legitimately, how much is this going to cost? So we give you the Arkansas numbers and the North Carolina numbers just to give you some ballpark of what this does cost. I think Arkansas would probably be pretty comparable. We spent $40 million on it over 3 years. I suspect that would be closer to what we would have to do.
Okay. And then you spoke to, and we've had these conversations in committee about this, about in the upcoming biennium needing to increase the base of the court.
Right.
What, do you have an estimate of what that increase would be?
I gotta look back over. It's going to be double digit, even the way not doing anything. Because right now, everybody was hit in the last few years with, we cannot keep up with salaries. We couldn't keep clerks in our county court clerk's office in Douglas County for blood or money. We had to pay our employees more. We did it by, we did a survey. We did it as scientifically as possible. We came to you, the legislature as a whole. You approved all of those increases, and all, basically the rest of state government got increases too. That was fabulous. By and large, our employees now are paid competitive wages, but you never put that in our base budget. So we're out there, they're all being paid more, but it's just from the carryover. And so that sooner or later has got to go in the base budget.
And what we're hearing is that carryover from the expenses you anticipate is going to be drawn down to about 2.8 million.
Right.
Thank you for being here, Chief Justice.
Thank you very much. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about this. I know you are always in a difficult position with money, and we all pay property taxes, and we all understand the need to do something about that. We had a plan for all the money that we're talking about today. So appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we will open it up for additional individuals who would like to testify to the Supreme Court.
Good afternoon, Senator Wishart, Chair of the Appropriations Committee. I am Corey Steele, C-O-R-E-Y-S-T-E-E-L, and I am the Nebraska State Court Administrator. If I could, I would like to hit on the budget request in this biennium budget and then go back and answer some of the questions that some of you have asked and then answer any other questions. I'm here to talk, I want to talk about the request that we have. The Chief Justice has already outlined for you a plan from the judicial branch that we have in place to spend some of the carryover and which is committed by this committee last year in our intent to spend down the probation cash fund. But I want to take this opportunity to speak to you about the mid-biennium requests. How I've structured my testimony is I have each of those budget requests and some bullet points, but I'll add to that and talk a little bit about each of those. First one is interpreter funding of $600,000. We were before this committee last year asking for an interpreter increase. This committee did not fund that interpreter increase in our budget request. And because of that, funding was not appropriate to the judicial branch. We did have a walkout by our court interpreters, which again are contract interpreters for the judicial branch for 2 weeks. It really slowed down the court process in the sense we had to continue hearings. We had to utilize the very few interpreters that we have on staff. We have 3 that are actually state employees. We've maxed them out to interpret as much as they could in the larger courts, full days, and then we utilize outstate interpreters. We do utilize technology. We have some hearings we can use technology such as which is set up in this room where they can remote in, and we use telephonic. But there is state law, there is federal law, Department of Justice laws, and there's constitutional provisions that interpreters need to be in court for some of those hearings. Any evidentiary hearings, they need to be sitting next to the defendant. They can't be telephonic. They can't be on video. Those are Department of Justice rules and regs. And if we violate those, we would be held in non-compliance, which would mean we would get no Department of Justice funds for the state of Nebraska. So there's a consequence to not having interpreters. We're requesting this again, as the Chief Justice talked about, 69 different languages last year alone were interpreted in our court systems across Nebraska. 69. Increase we know is coming. It's continued to increase each and every year. We've seen an increase of 14% of interpreter usage within our court system. It's viable, it's vital, we have to have it, it's part of the business. And I'll touch on that more, obviously, with a bill towards the end of the day, so I won't belabor that point. The next is judicial security. This is something I've been working on for a few years with some judges. And it really put us in high gear with the murder of a trial court judge in Maryland. This October, a judge made a decision on a child custody case that the defendant was not happy with, found his name, address online, drove to his home that night, and murdered him out in front of his doorstep because of a child custody case. It put things in high gear. Last year alone, in this state, we had an individual that was incarcerated going through it was going to put him away for a very long time. He is in a jail and he is making phone calls trying to find somebody to put a hit on one of our local judges in Nebraska. Luckily, with the Department of Corrections and the telephone communication was recorded and they caught it and got State Patrol involved and we were able to avoid any issue. But this individual had money and was going to put a hit on the judge that was going to sentence him on another offense. We've had others that I could go on for a long time. It's vital to keep our judges safe, to take their information off the internet. Increase Office of Public Guardian cash fund. This is simply a request. We have a cash fund with the Office of Public Guardian to increase the spending authority so that we can continue to train and educate our Office of Public Guardian staff. It's not new money. There's a cash fund there. It's just every time we hit that threshold, we have to ask for permission to spend more. Problem-solving court expansion. We have another judge and a jurisdiction that wants to start a reentry court. Dodge County, our judge is ready, willing, and able. We don't have the funding right now in order to do that. So that was that request to expand again problem-solving courts with this, which this committee has and the legislature has been fully supportive of for some time. Problem-solving court expediter. This was a plan that was put in place with a group that went down to a meeting. Senator Lathrop at the time was with us. This is putting an individual in probation. We want to pilot it in Douglas County. So at the time of arrest for a drug offense or drug issues are part of that offense, they're in the jail the next day. And for their bond hearing, they're already seeing if they're suitable, eligible, and available to be a part of a problem-solving court, a drug court, so that we can expedite then the arraignment and get them into the problem-solving court. Because we know getting somebody involved in treatment at that level in a very short time frame, we will have better success instead of the 4 to 6 months to go to arraignment. And lastly, the Self-Help Center, which also is a pilot in Douglas County that we've been working on. This is kind of an expansion of what Nebraska State Bar Association has done with attorneys. There's a lot of states that have put in self-help centers in their large jurisdictions where individuals that cannot afford an attorney, do not fit legal aid requirement, can go in, get help filling out the forms, know the process. So when they go to court, they have everything ready to go and submit that. Instead of going to court, the judge saying, I need this, let's set another hearing. Come back, don't have all the paperwork right, don't have everything. So it's a center where individuals that come in from as simple as a name change through custody battle can go make sure they have all the appropriate forms and everything to go into court. So that's, in a nutshell, very brief of the budget requests, and I'm happy to answer any questions on those for this biennium, and I'm happy to answer any of the questions that was asked of the chief or expand upon those if you would like.
Corey, do you have any you want to expand upon before we go into questions?
Senator Wishart, you had asked what's the potential for the biennium budget request? If all of the cash fund, the $10 million cash fund was taken and $7.5 million of the probation cash fund, our estimations based on our current spending and the things that have been instituted without base budget requested from last year, it would be anywhere from $8 to $12 million base budget request to continue status quo within the judicial branch. The other question that was asked, Senator, let's see, there was a question asked about were we made aware prior to the governor, Senator Dover, I'm sorry. What were we made aware? We met with Lee Will and Joe Wilcox prior to the governor's budget being released. And we went through these items with them, talked about the things that we had in the works and the money, what the money was already slated for. And at that time, it was only a $10 million reduction of cash of the carryover that was relayed to us. So we went to work to say how, if that happens, can we sustain the judicial branch in its manner for 1 year? That was then utilizing anywhere from 4.5 to 5.5 million of the probation cash fund for services. As the chief said in the state of the judiciary, we have a 25% increase this past year of juveniles on probation, which equates to more services being paid for those juveniles. So we've seen an increase over the last 6 months of the expenditure of the funds that are there for service dollars. And we estimated we were going to need about 4.5 to 5 million of the probation cash fund to sustain and pay for those services. Because if the $10 million reduction was gone, then we would use what we would be projected in the red out of the probation cash fund. So that was kind of a plan if worst case scenario. When we saw the budget recommendations from the governor, that was a surprise to us of the $7.5 million from the cash fund.
Okay, thank you, Senator Dover.
That's kind of, that was relayed to us also, that if you have to, the 10 is okay, but leave the 7. That was communicated to us.
Worst case scenario, we could make it 1 more year, but then next year is where my fear is coming in front of this committee for a base budget adjustment, because we have 3 years now of long-term funding expenditures, staffing that are long-term, not one time, that we haven't caught up to.
I think the main thing, I think that everybody needs to understand too, is that this is a one-time take. It isn't an ongoing, going to be taking the money. This is to front load the property tax relief so that the people in Nebraska, what happens is we do a property tax relief and then we pay the reverse. It doesn't happen for another year. They don't see anything, so to front load it. And the problem we have is that you're just one agency of many agencies where hundreds of millions of dollars are sitting, and it's really their money, and everybody has great intent. And I don't know if there will ever be the resources to satisfy everything, but that's just what I believe the governor's trying to do. Thank you.
Understand.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, yes.
Quick question. The problem solving court has had great results, and people being on probation it's really helped a lot of people. What's the cost difference between a person being on probation for a year versus being incarcerated in prison?
So I have to think back, because the chief had this figure in his state of the judiciary, and I think we're roughly, I want to say,
He said 41,000 in prison.
It's 41,000.
41,000 for somebody in prison, and it's about 3,500 for somebody on probation. It's a little more than that. Problem solving courts about 4,400.
Yeah.
10 to 1.
yes,
Can you repeat that?
about $4,000 a year for somebody in a problem-solving court, and 41,000 for somebody being incarcerated in prison.
10 to 1. With better results.
Correct. And that's one of the requests that we have, is an expansion of another problem solving. We did expand 2 problem solving courts last year with the approval of this committee, utilizing internal funds. So we were able to get another veterans treatment court in Sarpy County and a drug court in Platte County.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Additional individuals who would like to testify on Agency 5? Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Senator Wishart and the Appropriations Committee. My name is Katie McLeese Stevenson. A lot of spelling coming up. Katiemc, capital Leese, separate word, no hyphen, Stevenson, Stephenson. I'm testifying in support of the proposed budget
The increase in cost from the original estimate is due to several factors. The large inflationary price increase in construction materials have played a role in this increase. Additionally, the development of the project with more exact and detailed schematic designs versus a conceptual design has resulted in a firmer, more accurate estimate. Finally, the complexity of expanding the crime laboratory in phases will make sure it remains fully operational, clean, and secure, thus the requiring of the phasing of this project, which this adds to the overall cost. The recommendations for LB 1412 include appropriations for these increases. This continued support for the expansion provides a solution to continue to address the increasing volumes in testing, backlogs, delays in testing, as well as increased turnaround times currently experienced by the lab. The governor's recommendations for LB 1412 also include salary increases for officers that are classified under the Nebraska personnel rules, which totals about 1.1 million. Recently, contract negotiations for the State Law Enforcement Bargaining Council, or SLEBC, resulted in historically high salary increases of approximately 22.1% back in July of 23 for law enforcement members of SLEBC. This includes employees with the rank of trooper or sergeant. All other sworn positions above the rank of sergeant are determined based upon the state of Nebraska personnel rules, which had provided for a salary increase of 7% for qualifying employees. These positions are not members of the SLEBC labor union. In order to maintain equitable salary levels amongst all ranks of sworn employees, the agency, with the governor's support, increased the salary levels for the rules-based employees to an amount commensurate with that of the SLEBC employees. During the first year of the biennium, the agency has been able to cover the additional increase through its vacancy savings. However, as the agency continues to fill vacant positions, the amount of vacancy savings will decrease. Therefore, I respectfully ask the committee to include the governor's recommendation on this important request. I want to express our appreciation of your ongoing support of public safety initiatives. The Nebraska State Patrol remains committed to operating in a fiscally responsible manner and will continue to do so with your support. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have at this time.
Thank you for being here today. Thank you for your service as well. Any questions from the committee? Senator Vargas?
Thank you very, very much for being here, and thank you for the work in the past. You know, the committee supported the expansion of the crime lab, and so I have a couple questions, because I don't think the committee, I won't speak for the committee, I don't think I am opposed to more funding. The question I have is, we've been hearing about rising costs for a lot of different projects, for construction costs. I think the concern that we had, at least in the conversation, the concern I had was escalating by 55% was a lot. And if we had that original number, $8 million or $9 million more, or the 16.8, the question would be, would we have been able to even do it last year? Or we would have phased it out over a couple of years. So two questions. One, what really led to, at least maybe, what led to the increase or costs, or the under evaluating or estimating the project bid? And is it absolutely necessary that the funds need to be appropriated this year? Or is it something that can be spread out over future years? Those are the two questions.
Great, thank you, Senator. First of all, your observations about the overruns are well-founded. We might be able to attribute, these are all the same questions that I had when this challenge and opportunity was brought to me. We think the construction costs, materials, that could account for maybe 15 to 20%. But the 55%, as you indicated, is high. And certainly if we had known that would have been the cost, we would have brought that number to the committee at that time. The bottom line is the initial consulting firm missed the mark. As simple as that. They underestimated it. And as we got into the detailed design, and keep in mind the initial architect and engineering firm that did the initial assessment is not the same firm that is doing the estimates at this time due to procurement rules. And the new firm, or the second firm, is bringing in much more detailed plans. And the only explanation that I can give is that the initial firm just undershot it by quite a bit. It might sound like an excuse, but that's the reason.
And the second question, which is all the, this being a mid-biennium adjustment, if we were putting the money in this year, all of this would be spent this year?
That's another great question, Senator. As the project spools up, I guess it's conceivable that we could phase it over 2 years, but the push is to get this project moving. It's still moving very well through the design phase, and we need to get it done because we're understaffed, we don't have room for more equipment, and we need to get it moving. So if we were to phase it over the next, the balance of this biennium and the next biennium, it would have to be done rather soon in the beginning of the next biennium. So I think there's some risk involved with that, Senator. I know it's a big ask, but this is also the demand for the service is there, and I don't see that decreasing.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. I asked more for accounting because unless it's all going to be spent this year, if it's like half of it will be spent this year, then we can go to the next mid-biennium, we can go to the next budget and then account for the additional amounts or more overruns that might happen. I hope that's not the case, but
Makes two of us.
yeah, thank you.
Senator Dorn, did you have a question?
Thank you, Senator Wishart. Thank you for being here and doing what you do. You answered some of my questions with Senator Vargas here, but I guess, are you thinking about, or have you thought about going back and not having the same design or the same, I call it, concept of the building and everything in there? And with that, what about the current facility? What's happening to that?
So thank you, Senator. That's a great question. So the current facility is going to be added onto, and we have to keep doing the business. Okay. So as I understand it, they'll be able to build part of the laboratory space by keeping it separate from the existing lab. And then once that's functional, move some functions into there, then add on to the next part of the building. So your original question is basically, can we de-scope this thing? That's what got us into this problem in the first place. When the crime lab opened the 1st of 2015, it was too small the day we moved in. And because of costs, it was de-scoped at the time. And ultimately, our partners across the state suffered as a result of it. We immediately experienced increases in backlogs that impacted prosecutions. We don't want to be in that position again. So the scope of the project is necessary. It's unfortunate that we didn't have more accurate numbers when we first came to this body. We believe we have good numbers at this point.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay, I do have one. Have we seen a decrease since we passed constitutional carry of the need for background checks regarding concealed carry permits?
So thank you, Senator. That's a great question. Initially, we did see a decrease. I don't have those numbers, but I'd be glad to get those to you because we keep track of those on a monthly basis. What we're seeing anecdotally is a steady number of renewals for those who had permits, but the initial applications did decrease initially, and I can certainly get those numbers to you.
Yeah, it's always helpful for us to see an appropriations committee when a bill reduces the need for costs and government.
I believe that's very much true.
Okay, any other final questions? Bryce, thank you so much for being here.
Senator, thank you.
Okay, additional individuals who would like to testify regarding Agency 78. Excuse me, Agency 64, sorry. Okay, seeing none, anything for the record? No items for the record, so that closes the hearing for Agency 64, and we are going to open the hearing for Agency 78.
You ready, Vice Chair?
Yes.
Vice Chair Wisher, members of the Appropriations Committee, my name is Lee Will, Leewill, and I'm the State Budget Administrator for the state of Nebraska. I'm appearing today on behalf of Brian Tuma, the Executive Director of the Nebraska Commission on Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice, who could not be here today. On behalf of the Crime Commission, I wish to offer testimony in support of Governor Pillen's mid-biennial recommendation for 24 and 25. The Crime Commission is seeking an increase to personal service limitation, or PSL, in the amount of $154,000 in 24 and $159,000 in 25. The PSL increase is requested for 2 positions assigned to delivering several criminal justice program requirements. This is only a PSL change and not an ask for additional funding. The agency agrees with the governor's recommendation to lapse $1.3 million in general fund reappropriation in program 199, the Law Enforcement Training Center for FY24. Even after this lapse, the program has sufficient carryover to cover encumbrances and other obligations from the previous fiscal year. In LB 1014 in 2022, the legislature provided $47.7 million in federal ARPA funding to the Crime Commission to enhance and expand the training capabilities of the Law Enforcement Training Center in Grand Island. The project includes a new driving track, an indoor shooting range, and other facility upgrades. To date, the agency has expended nearly $1 million and obligated an additional $3.3 million. These costs are primarily design and planning related, with construction due beginning this summer. It is anticipated the agency will have all these ARPA funds obligated by the end of 24 and expended by the end of 2026. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Senator Doyle?
Thank you, Senator Bishop. Thank you for being here. So the 47.7 million, I mean, we just heard how much of a cost increase it was.
That's fair.
What do you think this, any idea, or have they had conversations with you about, will this come in at?
We must have had a little bit better consultant on the front end, because our costs are coming in pretty close to the
Okay.
$47.7 million. Yep. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? I was going to ask something similar. During the ARPA hearing, we heard a potential that they were coming in under budget. Is that not the case anymore?
Yeah, I think there could be about a $2 to $3 million fluctuation in there, full transparency, but we do think with construction costs, other things, that $2 to $3 million in buffer can get eroded rather quickly. So until we get to see the final bids, I can't tell you that there's $2 million there. I think it's probably going to come in right at 47.7 if I had to put my budget hat on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Well, thanks for being here.
Yep, thanks guys, appreciate it.
Okay, any other testifiers to agency 78? I'll get that number right this time. Okay, seeing none, no comments, so that closes the hearing for agency 78. And we will open the hearing for agency 94, the Commission on Public Advocacy. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Todd Lancaster, TODD-LANCASTER. I'm Chief Counsel for the Nebraska Commission on Public Advocacy. I've been with the commission since 2007 when I started as a staff attorney. I was agency counsel from 2015 until August of 2023, when I was appointed to take over as chief counsel for Jeff Pickens, who retired. I want to make it clear from the start, I'm not here to ask for additional transfer into our cash fund. I'm just here to ask to increase our PSL so we can use that money. The reason I'm asking to do this is to increase salaries for the attorneys at the commission so that their salaries are on par with the attorneys they face daily in the most serious criminal cases in Nebraska. Just as a refresher, the Nebraska Commission on Public Advocacy is a state agency. We can be appointed to represent indigent defendants charged with serious crimes of violence all throughout Nebraska in all 93 counties. The majority of our cases are first-degree murder cases, child abuse resulting in death cases, and sexual assault cases. We currently have 15 open murder cases. 2 of those are death penalty cases. We have open 5 first-degree sexual assault or sexual assault of a child cases. We have 2 open child abuse resulting in death cases. We have 11 cases on appeal right now, and we have 5 other cases that are serious crimes of violence that aren't homicides, and we are doing 1 DNA case. We also handle appeals for all the cases that we do, unless we have some sort of conflict. We are funded by a $3 fee that is made for just about all the cases that are filed in Nebraska, and that goes to support us. And we do our services to the counties for no cost to those counties. As you probably heard from testimony from other people, case findings have been going down for the last few years. It's resulted in our funds to support us going down. There were 2 bills proposed last year, one to make us part of the general budget and one by Senator Kay to increase our fee to $8 per filing. Neither of those were enacted. Thankfully, this committee found money to support us and gave us $1 million for the next 2 years to keep us operating. And we are extremely grateful for that. The commission has 6 attorneys, including myself, as chief counsel. One of the things I've been tasked to do is hire 3 new attorneys since I became chief counsel in August. One to replace my position as agency counsel, one to open a spot that had been, or to fill a spot that had been open since 2022, and one to fill a spot for somebody who retired at the end of the year. As you've heard, it's very hard to fill job openings right now, particularly with attorneys with the experience needed to do the cases we do. Not everybody right out of law school can do a murder case or a first-degree sexual assault case. In order to retain attorneys and support staff, I've had to raise salaries, which were kept artificially low over the last few years because of our recent budget crisis. We couldn't raise salaries because we had no money to do so. This meant our salaries have been falling below the attorneys that we are facing on a daily basis in serious crimes. I want to be able to raise our salaries to meet those of, for example, the Attorney General's office attorneys that we face in these cases, and to be equal to the salaries of public defender's offices, experienced attorneys. All public defender's office right now are looking for attorneys, and I could easily lose my attorneys to those places that are paying more money than I'm paying right now. So it's hard to retain and keep attorneys, especially particularly in this field of work, when we're competing with agencies that are having attorneys with higher salaries. That's the reason we're asking to increase our PSL, so we can compete with those attorneys and salaries, and that my attorneys can keep going out and doing these most difficult cases. And we're usually, for example, facing 2 or 3 attorneys when we do a murder case, from the AG's office and the local county attorney. It's often one of our attorneys and the support staff, maybe our attorneys and a local public defender. So we're doing lots of work, and we should, I believe, have our attorneys getting paid equal to those people that they're facing every day in these very difficult cases. So with that, I would open it for any questions.
Well, first of all, thank you for being here. I know you're a new face representing this agency as Jeff retired. So Jeff did a wonderful job, and looking forward to having you working at this agency.
I've got some big shoes to fill, yeah.
Senator Vargas.
Thank you for being here. I won't speak for some of my colleagues, like Senator Erdman. I know this is provides a cost reduction on behalf of local counties. And my question is, and maybe this is an ask in the future, because I won't be here next year, neither will Senator McDonald or Senator Wishart or Senator Erdman, but we often get agencies that are very reliant on FTEs that require technical, analytical, or law degrees. We ran into this with auditors, we ran into this with attorney generals, we ran into this even with the Supreme Court, which is like, if we are not keeping up with salaries, then we won't be able to retain people. We may be able to track them, but if they're with us for like a year, I mean, that's not doing the job. So I don't know if you've thought or what your plans are. I think oftentimes people come and testify and say, we need this to be attractive, to retain people. But then in a year or two, they'll be coming back in and it feels reactive. So I don't know if there's a plan to do something more proactive over the years saying, look, we're reviewing sort of the array of competitive salaries, and we plan to a minimum increase salaries by 3, 4, 5% to get to the median midpoint of what is competitive for public defenders in particular. So I don't know if you have a response to that or plans, but it just seems important.
Well, I can say as being chief counsel since August, I've had to learn a lot of things about salaries and running an office. I'd been agency counsel for a number of years, but wasn't in all the details as far as salaries. And I said, we were in a position where for almost 2 years, we were working without an attorney who had left, and we never filled that position because of budget stuff. And that meant that I was taking on a lot of cases, and the other attorneys were taking on lots of cases. And it was getting to the point where it was difficult to want to come into work because the load was so heavy. Particularly when I can look at the salaries of other people who I'm going against, or my friends who are in public defender's offices in other places of the state who are making more money than I am and aren't trying the cases I work. So we have been, since I've come in, tracking salaries of what public defenders are making, not just every public defender, because not every public defender could switch to our office and do what we're doing. But those public defenders that are doing the murder cases and the serious cases. And I'm keeping an eye on that so that the attorneys in my office are going to be able to have competitive salaries with them. We're not at what the attorneys we face every day at the AG's office are right now. I'm hoping to get there. Obviously, if you've had somebody working at a public defender's office for 20 plus years, their salary goes up each year. So I can't really compete with a lot of those, but I want to be able to be close to that. The commission has been very lucky over the years, at least since I started 17 years ago, in keeping attorneys for long periods of time. My hope is the new hires that I've hired now, those 3 attorneys are going to stay with the commission for a long time, and I think they certainly will. They're doing cases that are important, that they're passionate about, that challenge them, and it's kind of a dream job for a lot of these attorneys to be able to work this level of cases, but also the cases we get take a toll on people. But I think the new attorneys I've hired now are dedicated public servants and public defenders who I think are going to stay for a long time. And hopefully we can give them a salary that encourages them to do that.
Any other questions, Senator Burks?
If you do create a plan, that would be really helpful. And my only ask would be if you don't, I know you're not doing this, but it's important for the public. Public defenders is one data point, but the prosecutors is another. And you'll find in a lot of counties, there's a wide difference still between those 2 sides, and both are attorneys. So thank you for
that. Having been a public defender, I understand that pay gap between the county attorney and the public defender. Thankfully, some counties have parity. Not all of them do. And of course, I can only run my office, but I know that's a problem in lots of counties right now, that they can't hire public defenders that have openings because the salary is so low, nobody will come in and take them. And this is not just in my office, it's in public defender's office all around the state. And it's an issue. And we've been talking in other committees about the lack of attorneys in greater Nebraska and how to increase that. And that's going to be a bigger problem as time goes on, unless we can induce people to go out there. And one of the ways to do that is have higher pay.
Any other questions from the committee? I do have one. Can you provide us with a cost comparison of other defenders that have similar positions in terms of their salaries and the AG's salaries, just so we can look at?
We have those numbers available, and I can get them to you today or tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Well, It's good to meet you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional testifiers to Agency 94? Okay, seeing none. We do have one proponent for the commission's budget. And And that closes our hearing for agency 94. And that opens our hearing for LB 864. Senator Dungan, welcome.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wishart and members of the Appropriation Committee. Good afternoon. It's been a busy day for everybody, I think. My name is George Dungan, Georgedungan. I represent Legislative District 26, which is Northeast Lincoln. And I'm here today to introduce LB 864. The intent of LB 864 is to appropriate an additional $600,000 to the Supreme Court from the general fund for the next fiscal year. This additional funding will go to the Supreme Court to increase payments for interpreter services for the deaf and hard of hearing, as well as those that are unable to communicate in the English language. Up until recently, court interpreters had not seen a pay raise since the early 2000s. This lack of pay had resulted in many interpreters turning to private practice instead of taking cases within our judicial system. When we can't get an interpreter, cases get rescheduled, needlessly extending proceedings at great cost to the state, and also increasing the amount of time that individuals spend in custody, especially if they are pending any kind of plea or sentencing. Earlier this session, we yet again heard Chief Justice Heavican in his State of the Judiciary speech speak about the importance of court interpreters, stating last year and this year that our contract interpreters are that we need to ensure that we increase the amount of interpreters we have, and that's exactly what LB 864 is going to do. To deviate from this briefly, you obviously heard earlier today from Chief Justice Heavican and the Supreme Court. I anticipate after I'm done speaking here, you're going to hear yet again from Corey Steele. I want to highlight to you the necessity of what we're talking about here. I, as many of you know, practiced as an attorney for a number of years. I'm still a practicing attorney, and I often use court interpreters. Just 2 weeks ago, I had a gentleman that I was working with who spoke no English, who only spoke Vietnamese. And it was only because of the interpreter that I worked with that I was able to resolve his case and get it taken care of. These interpreters do incredibly difficult work. And I think you're going to hear from a couple of them here today about the nature of their work and why it's so important. They do simultaneous translation. They interpret very complicated legal things that are hard to even explain in English. They also have to interpret people like me who speak very fast and use a lot of idioms. It's very, very complicated. They absolutely work hard for their money. As you probably recall, last year we had a conversation in the legislature about increasing the amount of money to the Supreme Court for their payment. Ultimately, we did amend into the budget, I believe $400,000 across the biennium for their pay. Unfortunately, that did not stay in the budget. After that happened, there was a work stoppage of the interpreters because they were unable to come to work for a period of time because they weren't getting paid enough and they literally couldn't make ends meet, so they had to take jobs elsewhere in other private sectors. I'm not exaggerating when I say that that literally led to a stoppage of a number of cases in district courts and county courts around the state. It was a huge problem. After that happened, the Supreme Court did ultimately work with myself, the interpreters, and a number of other people to find a way to temporarily increase the amount of pay they would get. It was not the full amount that the court interpreters were asking for, but it did increase it to a level that ultimately resulted in their ability to continue working. That amount of money that they increased, though, is not sustainable. Based on the budget the Supreme Court currently has and based on the funds that they utilize for other services, it is my fear and my genuinely held belief that if we don't allocate some additional money to the Supreme Court, that ultimately the interpreter's pay is going to revert back to the unworkable amount that it was before, and we're going to find ourselves in exactly the same problem. We talked about this last year. It was ultimately, I think, a very bipartisan vote to amend that into the budget. It was something that had a lot of support. So my hope here today is that we can underscore the importance of this when you hear from those interpreters, hear from Corey Steele, and myself when I say this is something we really should do, and it's something we have to do. We have a statutory and constitutional obligation to provide these services, and we need to make sure that we are reimbursing the people who provide these services adequately. Happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, Senator Dungan. Any questions? Seeing none, will you be here to close?
I will try. I have another bill, but I think it's not going to come up for a while.
So we are going to start with proponents of LB 864. afternoon.
My name is Kelly Vargas. It's spelled KELLYVARGUEZ. And I'm here this afternoon to yes, no relation, similar pronunciation. I get that a lot. I'm here to express my hope that you will approve LB 864 and grant the one-time cash infusion for the $600,000 needed to carry on with the rate increase we earned after a significant amount of time without any such increase last year. You will hear from two other colleagues of mine here today who have different aspects of the job to discuss with you. But I wanted to mention during my moments with you a few of the misconceptions that I've come up against over the last year, that this issue has been more at the forefront of people's minds. First of all, I get asked, well, why is there a shortage if we have so many bilingual Nebraskans? Can't anybody who speaks more than one language be an interpreter? And the fact of the matter is that it takes more than being bilingual to do the work that we do in the courtrooms, which is why it's such a limited number of people that are currently providing this service. Just like we don't assume that, you know, if I have a pilot's license to puddle jump across Nebraska, I could be a fighter pilot. We also can't assume that bilingual people automatically equal court interpreters. We, as Senator Dungan discussed, we undergo long hours of training and hard work to learn how to take in one message in one language, understand it, find equivalents, and say it in another language simultaneously. We can retain long portions of convoluted speech and render them in an opposite language accurately, precisely. We can read documents written in one language in a variety of registers of the language and ability levels, render them again faithfully in the opposite language. And all of that takes a long time to learn. And currently there's probably about 30 in Nebraska interpreters who regularly provide services. If 5% of Nebraskans speak a language other than English at home, that's about 100,000 people. 30 or so interpreters for those 100,000 people that could find themselves in court is a ratio of one interpreter to every 300 or so Nebraskans, which just illustrates the level of specialization that we have. And with specialization should come fair and commensurate wages, which is what 864 would do. Another thing that I hear is, you know, you're just there for criminal defendants. These are lawbreakers. Why should we give any more money? And part of the answer to that question is because it's mandated in our country. We provide that service. But another part of the answer to that question is that we're not only providing services from English into other languages for defendants. We're there for civil litigants. We're there for parents of juveniles. We interpret for victims of crimes and for witnesses in trials. So there's a wide array of people that we serve. But then we also need to think about the fact that we just serve people who don't speak English. We also provide a bridge to communication for people who don't speak Arabic and Somali and Spanish and American Sign Language. So if you widen and realize that, well, we could potentially be serving any Nebraskan that would end up in the court system, our ratio in specialization is even more. There's only one interpreter, 67,000 Nebraskans or so. It's significant. And then finally, I have heard people ask whether the state employees. The reason that we are worked a $75 rate is to restore purchasing power that was set as suppressed back in 2004 when our rates were set. We're not asking for higher than that, just the same purchasing power to go along with our specialization. And we're not court employees. Only about 3 people provide 3 people provide this service are employees of the state of Nebraska. The rest are all business owners. And so by approving 864, you would be helping a number of small business in Nebraska be available for a longer amount of time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here. Any questions? Any questions? Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for coming. I know it says here, the $75 an hour rate, you take about 1/3 of that. So how do you charge that rate? You're actually in court? When is your pay stop? Does it start?
We are guaranteed a 2-hour minimum. So if we come to the court for any reason, we know we'll take home a 2-hour minimum. And then we prorate it according to court rules after that, about every 15 minutes. And so a daily rate for an interpreter, depending on the need, it could be as low as $150 for a certified interpreter, and less than that with different qualification levels. And the reason that we've gone with that model is because the needs fluctuate, the cases are flexible, and in order to preserve the integrity of the process, we need service providers that can adjust their schedule to the need.
How many hours a week would you say the average interpreter works?
We don't normally measure it by hours. We definitely don't work a 40-hour work week the way that most state employees do. I always count mine by appointments. So a full load for me would be 10 appointments a week. And I do normally am needed that much, if not going beyond the 10 windows of payment per week. But that's me. We have a really huge variety, as an interpreter of a recently arrived refugee population like Pashto, for example, may only be needed once a month for a few months while a case progresses through the court system. So there's a lot of variety in there.
So I would assume that there are some of these cases you have studied to do at home
Yes.
before you get there?
Yes.
Are you paid for that?
No, that's part of the reason also that the precedent was set at $50 back in '04, which now would equal $85 to help interpreters offset the time investment in being prepared for our hearings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Additional proponents.
Good afternoon, honorable members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Vladimir Basan, Vladimir. Last name Bacan. I live here in Lincoln, Nebraska. Nebraska has been my home for 24 years. 12 years ago, year 2012, I became a certified court interpreter for Spanish. I am also a former interpreter coordinator for the state. I was in charge of Hull County for 4 years, Lancaster County for almost 4 years. During my time as a coordinator, I experienced firsthand how difficult it is to find interpreters, to cover all the cases that we have in the calendar, and even when we find interpreters, to always be guessing if we actually found the best person for the job. It's very difficult. It's so difficult that I think the last person to get certified to be a court interpreter was in 2016. We do a very specialized job. It's very difficult. It's very mentally taxing. There's no application. There's no computer software that can replace us. Artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, it's no match for what we do. We cannot be replaced, at least not yet. I'm sure if we were, you would have been able to find a cheaper option. But we provide a very important service. And I think something that we need to think of is we provide equal access. We guarantee due process. What we offer is a service that is vital for the courts to be able to provide justice. It's a constitutional right. It's protected by the Constitution. It's protected by the state constitution. This is not an issue of language. This is not an issue of immigration. This is an issue of how do we make that everyone is actually equal before the law. That's the state model. right? So that's why we are here. That's why I'm here asking you to support LB 864. As I mentioned before, for the time being, we cannot be replaced. We are professionals. We follow professional code of ethics. We are officers of the court and we behave as such. And your support is very important. Last year, July of last year, we finally got an increase in our rates after almost 20 years. Before that, and I experienced that myself, we were losing interpreters. The numbers were going down. I myself quit my job with the state, started offering my services in the private sector, in the federal courts, because they pay more. Finally, when we got an increase, we started getting new people. Finally, I saw new faces in the courtroom. And I'm afraid that if we cannot secure funding, the numbers are going to start going down again. And the Supreme Court and the courts and the state courts are going to suffer because we won't have enough people to provide the vital services that we provide. Thank you very much, and please support LB 864.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Senator Erdman?
Thank you, Senator Wishart. So the rate is 75 now. If we make this contribution, this appropriation, what is the rate then?
We are not asking for an increase. This is just so that we can maintain the rate that we got. Yes.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Additional components.
Good afternoon, distinguished members of the legislature. My name is Tagreed Trindle, T-A-G-H-R-E-E-D, last name T-R-I-N-D-L-E. I am a court interpreter in the Arabic language for the state and the federal courts based in Omaha, Nebraska. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time and your attention in this matter. I am grateful for this opportunity to address you today and hoping you will lend your support to LB 864. I started my career as an interpreter when I was 23 years old when U.S. military forces arrived in my home country of Iraq. After living so long under an oppressive regime, I was optimistic for an opportunity of freedom and a life of hope. For 4 years, I accompanied U.S. military forces on oftentimes dangerous missions as they sought to bring liberty and stability to Baghdad. As an interpreter, I served as a linguistic and cultural link between these young men and women and my countrymen who they sought to assist. I'm extremely proud of my time with them and the mission that I was a part of. Eventually, I was lucky enough to meet my husband, a soldier, now a law enforcement officer, who brought me to the United States and the great state of Nebraska. Gaining my American citizenship is one of the happiest moments of my life. I'm proud to say that 17 years later, I have a wonderful family and we are glad to call Nebraska home. To me, America brought the promise of liberty. A component of that liberty is equal access to justice and representation before the law. As a court interpreter, I am happy to say that I am a crucial component of said access and representation. For an ever-increasing immigrant population who often don't speak English, court interpreter bridge the language gap, ensuring that all non-English speakers are able to navigate a sometimes complex legal system. However, for some time now, that access has suffered. Our wages have been stagnant, which has meant that as time progressed, more and more interpreters have sought to supplement their income elsewhere. It's sad because the men and women I work with feel strongly about justice, equality, and fairness. They want desperately to be a part of our legal system, a system that is the envy of the entire civilized world. However, these same men and women have an obligation to provide for their families and to put food on the table. LB 864 ensures that we have adequate funding to recruit qualified interpreters capable of meeting the demands of judges, attorneys, court staff, and clients. LB 864 means that interpreters are provided a living wage by keeping pace with economic demands, something that has not seen change since 2004. LB 864 means that the best interpreters will seek work as court interpreters in our community rather than taking their talents to other employers. And when the best interpreters are working to ensure equal access to justice for all, our democracy and all of its citizens are better off. Thank you for your time. This has been a great honor.
Thank you so much for
Yes.
being here.
It's my pleasure.
Any questions? Well, thank you. Additional proponents? Good afternoon. Good
Good
to see you again.
afternoon. Good to see you all again. My name is Corey Steele, Coreysteel, and I'm the Nebraska State Court Administrator. I talked to you earlier in my testimony on our judicial branch budget regarding this is one of the areas that we have asked for increased funding for the past couple of years. I want to reiterate, this is a constitutional mandate, a statutory mandate that this legislature put into effect 100 years ago. We celebrated that this year. It's a Department of Justice oversight issue. This is not a program or a service that we want or need, or this would make the court operations smoother or better. It is a mandated, needed service, as you heard, for access to justice for these individuals that cannot speak another language. It is a crucial part of doing the business and the operational functions of the court. It's just one of those business operational things that we must fund. I urge each and every one of you to talk to your local judges. When interpreters walked out for 2 weeks last year in July, or in June, before we were able to somehow figure out a way to fund the additional increases, not what they wanted, not what I wanted, but we came to a compromise with Senator Dungan's help. I received letters, emails, phone calls from judges across the state saying, you have to do something. We cannot operate court without these essential individuals in our courtroom. As the Chief Justice stated, 69 different languages last year. 69 different languages. Last year, I testified in front of this committee that we were going to expend our 1.4 million budget. This year, this fiscal year, we were at 2.1 million. I was right. This current fiscal year, our estimations are we will be at 2.6 million for interpreter services. We've increased efficiencies within the interpreter program. We have done block scheduling where with our county courts, we set either 2 or 4 hours, different days of weeks, and that's where predominantly our Spanish speaking is our largest portion. So when we block those schedules for 2 hours or 4 hours, we know we have an interpreter there for that 2 hours. So those cases are all set at that time. That's a more efficient way than having an interpreter come back 3, 4 different times throughout the day. We instituted a new online education orientation program to attract more interpreters. We had 24 soon to be, or those that want to be interpreters in our orientation class just a little over 2 weeks ago. We used to have 3 or 4 individuals in those year in and year out. We had 24 when we moved that to an online. It's the most we've had in any class in over 5 years. So increasing the pool has been a priority of ours. We've also reached out after last year's testimony, thank you to Senator Armendariz, with the medical institutions that provide interpreter services. We've linked with them and providing resources back and forth and been able to attract some of the medical interpreters to come over and get certified. It's a different language, right? Medical interpretation is different than court interpretation, just different languages and the words, but getting them certified so that they can expand as well. We have reached out to and partnered with some of the schools and universities to put interpreter orientation within the curriculum for those individuals that are either come into the United States non-English speaking and have now are in the universities, or community members to come in and enroll in those as well. So we're trying to increase that pool. We're looking for ways that we can provide and expand the services we have. We've also looked at what other and how other ways can we provide interpreter services within our court systems. We utilize remote services as much as we can, telephonic and through video. But again, there are mandates that we can't at every point in time have video interpretation. It must be in person. It must be there. So we're also looking at ways we can expand that. Again, when interpreters walked out and we sat at the table, we agreed we needed to continue and get the 600,000 this year just to be sustainable. And as I've talked about before with our budget, this is an ongoing expense. It's an ongoing increasing expense, as I've highlighted. It's not a one-time, it's not carryover that we can influx this one year and everything will be fine into the future. These are ongoing expenses for the judicial branch that we must provide. They're services we must provide. And I want to thank the interpreters that have come in today for their testimony and thank them for their partnership throughout these trying times over the last couple of years. With that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Well, thank you again for being here. Any questions from the committee? Okay, I have a couple. You spoke about the potential if we do not provide in-person interpreter services to lose just some of the justice funding. What's the price tag that we are looking at potentially losing?
You know, I'd have to get with the Crime Commission as they receive a lot of the Department of Justice funding for the state, as they're the state agency that administers all the federal funding. But when you're in violation of a DOJ regulation, it affects all of your DOJ funding for the state.
If you could get us what that number is, I think that would be helpful. And then I have heard multiple times today that the 600,000 is a one-time ask. Why not be asking for a base increase since this is an ongoing expense?
Well, in our budget proposal for the judicial branch, there was the 600,000 base increase request. And as Senator Dungan and I met earlier prior to the legislative session, we thought we probably need to tackle this both ways. I'm going to ask for it in my budget, and if you're going to introduce a piece of legislation, that would be good too, so that we have both things out there and let this committee determine how you want to move forward. And so Senator Dungan said, well, it's one fiscal year and it's a mid-biennium, so he put it in for 1 year, I believe, with the hopes that then we would roll that into our base budget if you approve the bill, or my hope would be you would approve it in our budget.
And so just to be clear, approving 600,000 as you've requested in the budget would be to meet what the current obligation is in terms of what was the agreement that was come to with the interpreters.
Correct. So when we met in July, the interpreters and Senator Dungan and I made a commitment to them for 1 year that I will increase the funding up to $75, and I outlined that in my original testimony. Certified went from 50 to 75, registered 35 to 60, non-certified 35 to 50. Those staggered increases for 1 year. I could only commit to that for 1 year till this June 30 of this year. If we did not and were not able to seek funding, the 600,000 for ongoing, I'm going to have to readjust the budget, and those may be reduced and decreased back to the original funding. Because as you can see, it's not the fact that the expenditures are continuing to grow just because we're paying interpreters more. It's continuing to grow because the need is greater than it was the year previous. We continue, and new languages. I just approved a bill less than a week ago for a trial in Nebraska where we had to fly in 2 interpreters, one from California, one from Minnesota, for a 2-day trial. It was a child custody proceeding that they had to be in person. It's mandated. So the court, it was a child custody, and they were going to be here for 2 days. We pay for all their flight. We pay for their hotel.
We pay a per diem for them to be here, and then they get their hourly rate as well. Those bills are anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000 that, again, we must pay. I can't tell the court, we can't fly them interpreters in. We can't do that. There's nobody in Nebraska that speaks and is certified to speak that language.
Okay, thank you. Any final questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Additional proponents.
Good afternoon, Vice Chairwoman Wishart and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Dylan Severino. That's DYLAN-SEVERINO. I'm here on behalf of the ACLU of Nebraska, and I'm here in support of LB 864. I've heard a lot of our concerns and points made already, so I'll keep this brief. The ACLU fights for the right for everyone to access courts and to fully participate in legal proceedings, no matter what a person's proficiency in English is. As others have pointed out, Nebraska law requires that, quote, in any proceeding, the presiding judge shall appoint an interpreter to assist any person unable to communicate the English language for preparation and trial of his or her case, end quote. This law is a necessity in a multilingual state. As the Department of Justice summarized very nicely in a memo entitled Language Access in State Courts, quote, interpretation and translation are essential to providing meaningful access to the courts and to maintaining the integrity of our justice system. Court cases are often highly structured, stressful experiences requiring specialized terminology. Without careful attention to providing effective language services, many people will face a judicial process that places unfair and unconstitutional burdens on their ability to fully participate in proceedings. At the same time, relying on uninterpreted or poorly interpreted testimony from witnesses who are not proficient in English or from improperly translated documents will hinder the court's ability to determine the facts and dispense justice, end quote. It is a legal requirement and a logistical necessity for the Supreme Court of Nebraska to have access to interpreters to properly adjudicate cases where anyone playing a role in the trial has a limited English proficiency. Maintaining the funds needed to achieve this adequate interpretation will keep us in line with our state motto, equality before the law. For these reasons, the ACLU of Nebraska expresses gratitude to Senator Dungan for introducing LB 864 and urges the committee to advance this legislation to the floor. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for being
Thank you.
here. Any additional proponents? Seeing none, any opponents to LB 864? Seeing none, anyone in the neutral? Seeing none, Senator Dungan, would you like to close?
Yes, briefly. Thank you again, members of the Appropriation Committee. I want to just take a moment to thank the interpreters that were here today for their incredibly hard work. And I also want to make sure I take a moment to thank Corey Steele from the courts. We've all been working really hard on this. I think you can tell from his testimony that this was an ongoing conversation that we had during the interim. It's been at the top of my agenda for really the entire time I've been in the legislature because it's really an important issue. So I appreciate them coming in. I think the courts have done a really amazing job of trying to come up with ways to save money. You know, Corey Steele talking about putting people into blocks and finding ways to consolidate, utilizing online services like Zoom to try to get people present. That really is helpful. But I can tell you that if we don't at least maintain the amount of interpreters that we have, if not increase, even with those solutions, it's not tenable. This Vietnamese gentleman I was speaking about earlier, when I was in court with him, the only Vietnamese interpreter available couldn't be there in person because she was stretched too thin and she had to be in another courthouse that same day in another county. So what she was doing actually is zooming into our courtroom. So what happens is you're sitting in the courtroom like this and there's a Zoom screen with anybody who's zoomed in. My gentleman that I'm sitting there with who doesn't speak a lick of English is out in the hallway. And I have to find a way to tell him to come in because I thought the interpreter was going to be there. I realized our interpreter was going to be on Zoom. So we ultimately had me get him out of the courtroom. We went upstairs to a conference room. I pulled out my phone. I logged on to Zoom, to the Zoom call in the courtroom. The judge put us in a breakout room And then I sat there with a phone between us while I talked to my client and tried to explain incredibly complex legal matters on what was really, frankly, not a very good connection. And ultimately, we worked it out. But this took so much more time than it would have been if the interpreter had just been there in person, being able to simultaneously translate, which I know they try to be and oftentimes are. But because we have a dearth of interpreters available, it's simply not always an option. So while I think it's important that we utilize these services like online services, it's really a stopgap. It's not the answer. The answer is trying to find ways to maintain the interpreters we have and find a way to get more of them. We're not asking today for an increase in salary. All we're asking for is the money to maintain what's currently been given. And I think that's crucial to making sure we fulfill our constitutional obligations. So I would appreciate your support of LB 864 and can answer any final questions you might have.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
And we do have 11 position comments in proponents, 0 opponents, and 0 in the neutral. So that closes the hearing for LB 864, and that opens our hearing for LB 1225. Senator McKinney,
Hey.
welcome.
How y'all doing?
Good.
You ready?
We're ready.
Good evening, Vice Chair Wishart and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Terrell McKinney, Terrell McKinney. I represent District 11 in the legislature, which is North Omaha. Today, I am presenting LB 1225, which will appropriate funds to the Nebraska Commission on Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice. In recent years, communities across Nebraska, particularly in Omaha, have faced numerous challenges, ranging from economic downturns to social unrest and natural disasters. In times of crisis, families often bear the brunt of the impact, facing heightened stress, financial instability, and emotional turmoil. Recognizing the critical role of local entities in supporting families during these trying times, it is imperative to appropriate funds to the Nebraska Commission on Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice to provide assistance to these entities. LB 1225 explores the significance of such funding allocation, the mechanism through which it can be executed, and the rationale for targeting qualified census tracts in Omaha. The Nebraska Commission on Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice plays a pivotal role in promoting public safety and enhancing the effectiveness of criminal justice by providing financial assistance to local entities through the Nebraska Victim Advocacy Program administered by the Crime Commission. The Commission can leverage its resources to support families facing crisis. These local entities, including community organizations, shelters, and counseling services, are often on the front lines providing crucial assistance to individuals and families in need. However, limited resources can hinder the ability of these entities to meet the growing demand for their services, particularly in areas with high poverty levels and crime. Omaha, like many urban centers, grapples with concentrated pockets of disadvantages where families are disproportionately affected by crisis. By focusing the distribution of funds on qualified census tracts in Omaha, policymakers can effectively target areas with the most acute needs for assistance. This approach ensures that resources are allocated where they are needed the most, maximizing their impact on vulnerable families. Moreover, by channeling funds through the Nebraska Victim Advocacy Program, the Commission can ensure accountability and transparency in the allocation process. Entities seeking funds must meet specified criteria and demonstrate their capacity to effectively support families during crisis. This rigorous evaluation process safeguards against any perceived misuse of funds and ensures that resources are directed towards initiatives with the greatest potential to make a positive impact and difference in the lives of families. Investing in supporting families during crisis yields numerous benefits for individuals and communities and society as a whole. By providing timely assistance and resources, local entities can help families navigate challenging circumstances, mitigate the long-term impact of crisis, and promote resiliency. Strong, supportive families are the cornerstone of thriving communities, and by empowering them through times of need, we lay the foundation for a more resilient and equitable society. In conclusion, appropriating funds to the Nebraska Commission on Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice to support local entities to assist families during crisis is a prudent investment in the well-being of just communities in general across Nebraska. By targeting qualified census tracts in Omaha, we can ensure that resources are directed to areas with the greatest need and impact, though through the Nebraska Victim Advocacy Program. And I brought this bill because it honestly is something that I've always thought about, even before coming to office. I always wondered why, when families go through crisis, they have a hard time getting help. And I've seen in my whole life where, and not just, and I know we mentioned gun violence, but not even just with gun violence. A family member dies unexpectedly, and you have families scraping up dollars trying to figure out what they're going to do. And a lot of those families end up going in debt just trying to bury a family member or trying to help a family member, and it's nowhere for them to go. And especially if family member is a victim of a crime, whether it's gun violence or domestic violence or anything like that. It's a hard time, and a lot of these services have limited resources, and they really don't have the resources to help these families. And when a lot of these crises happen, you see them trying to pull resources together to try to help these families out. And I speak to these people, and they're like, man, I don't know what to do. It's so much need. And once people see that this entity is helping people, they start getting flooded with calls or messages or emails like, hey, I need help too. But they already tapped out of like, hey, I don't have it. And that's why I brought the bill, because I think as a state, I think we should try to do something. I don't think $2.5 million is a lot. I think we probably could do more, but I think it's something. And I know people probably tired of me bringing it up, but I think an investment of $2.5 million avoid us having to expand that prison that's being built in 10 years, because we start helping our families at the time of crisis. And if we address that trauma then, it doesn't lead to that kid dealing with trauma through their childhood, through their teenage years, and then adult years, and then they ended up in the system. So I think it's a much needed investment for the state, and I open myself up for questions.
Thank you, Senator McKinney.
No problem.
Any questions? Senator Jordan.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for being here. The census tract, explain that a little bit. You just have one or two, or what?
Qualified
or
census
is there
tracts.
income levels with that census tract, or what? How did you come about with the census tract?
I came up with that because that's the best way to kind of target areas in the state. That's how we targeted the areas through LB 1024 and 531. I forget the exact amount of qualified census tracts, but it's a good amount in North and South Omaha, and there's also others across the state as well.
It's all of those. It's not just limited to a specific area in one of our cities. Yeah.
In the bill is limited to Omaha, but there's other qualified census tracts across the state. Yeah.
But this bill here is limited to Omaha.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, Senator, are you going to stay here to close?
Yes, I will.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now open up the hearing for proponents for LB 1225. Welcome.
My name is Tamika Meese, and that's Tamika Mease.
Tamika, go ahead and get started.
Thank you. Today, I am here representing North Omaha Community Partnership. We are a dedicated nonprofit organization that provides crucial support to families affected by gun violence, gang violence, domestic violence, and youth suicide within our community. We humbly request that you and your esteemed colleagues on the committee give your full support to advance Legislative Bill 1225. Part of our organization's mission is to facilitate crisis assistance to those in dire need. We endeavor to offer a lifeline through services like emergency shelter relocation, assistance with permanent housing, funeral planning, including financial support for funerals, and crucial funeral security to maintain public safety during sensitive times. Our proactive engagement with families and our efforts to de-escalate potential conflicts help to ensure that these events pass with dignity and peace. Furthermore, we collaborate closely with the Omaha Police Department and specifically the gang unit, fostering a level of communication and transparency that is essential for maintaining a discreet law enforcement presence during victims' funerals. Such cooperation allows the Omaha Police Department to operate covertly, preserving the delicate relationship between law enforcement and our community. Our wraparound services, including the Bridge the Gap Mental Health Program, food assistance, utilities assistance, and our diapers and wipes program, are designed to support families beyond the immediate crisis, addressing long-term well-being and stability. LB 1225 is pivotal to organizations like ours, as it will enable us to enhance and expand our services. The bill's passage will not only be a testament to Nebraska's commitment to community support, but also an investment in the safety and health of its citizens. By advancing this bill, you will have the power to positively affect countless lives, assisting us in our mission to create a safer, healthier, and more resilient community. We respectfully urge the committee to recognize the significance of this bill and to take a stand for the families and individuals who rely on organizations like North Omaha Community Partnership for support in their most challenging moments. Thank you for considering this request, and we are hopeful that your support and look forward to the positive outcomes that LB 1225 will bring. And I'm open to any questions.
Well, thank you for being here today and for everything you do for your community. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Additional proponents? Welcome.
Thank you. Well, it's good to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Steve Cerveny, Stevecerveny. I'm a deputy chief with the Omaha Police Department, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today and speak with you, senators of the Appropriations Committee. The Omaha Police Department supports LB 1225. Many times, victims of violent crime need some financial assistance, along with helpful wraparound services, and occasionally the ability to relocate, taking themselves out of volatile situations that may continue to repeat a violent cycle if help is not available. This measure goes a long way in assisting victims to become whole again after experiencing a traumatic, violent incident. We believe this bill provides a meaningful, comprehensive approach. We as a police department understand the value for every individual to be healthy, whole, and happy in the communities we serve. To lead a safe, productive life, which enables every individual to contribute their value in the neighborhoods where they live and thrive. One of the pillars of our mission as a law enforcement agency is community outreach. Cultivating and building relationships throughout the community is impactful and vital, critical to success. We support and understand the value of community outreach programs like this, which is why we support it wholeheartedly. One example of a community outreach group that would benefit from this measure and continue to provide critical resources to victims and their families is the NOCP, which you just heard from, the North Omaha Community Partnership Group. Made up of tremendous individuals. Tamika Meese, I know her personally, and I've seen the work that she does, and it's phenomenal. She's a true strong leader, boots on the ground on the front lines, helping these individuals. They do tremendous work providing wraparound services for victims of violent crime and their families. Their efforts have been very valuable to help restore peace and safety within communities who have been adversely affected by violent crime. One example that Tamika mentioned was their assistance at funerals, where sometimes there is the potential threat of violence to continue, and they've done a tremendous job helping us keep peace and safety. So we at the Omaha Police Department wanted to be here today and support Senator McKinney's bill. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here and for your service.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Additional proponents?
Hi, my name is Dan Martin, M-A-R-T-I-N, and I am the Vice President of the Omaha Police Officers Association. I didn't prepare a speech here, but I wanted you to know that we've worked with Ms. Meese on several occasions involving violent crimes in North Omaha, homicides. And there is a huge gap in what is needed as far as services after something traumatic and a crime or a murder. And it seems like Ms. Meese is always there, wrapping her arms around the family, coordinating with our officers, the police department, and the gang unit, and providing what is really needed. There's a lot of expenses that come with the death of someone tragically and unexpectedly. There's not a lot of services for those types of things immediately. And part of the grieving process and being able to close that part of your life involves the funeral and the expenses that come with it. They're not free. That's just one part of the system, the process. I've had many discussions with Senator McKinney and Ms. Meese and discussions with other community leaders at Omaha 360 and other places. And I think this funding is so important that we offer it to people that can't afford it and to help them bridge the gap monetarily. So I just wanted to get on the record with the Omaha Police Officers Association that we 100% support Senator McKinney and Mrs. Meese's goals in the community. It goes a long way. So, any questions?
Well, thank you for being here and thank you for your service.
Thank
Any
you.
questions? Seeing none, thank you. Additional proponents? Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is James Hunter, Jameshunter. Thank you for having this opportunity to speak on behalf of LB 225 in support of this bill. I represent U-Turn, which is a community violence prevention program in Omaha. And our executive director has prepared a statement that she would like for me to share. The executive director of U-Turn, a community violence prevention organization, our platform is the evidence-based Cure Violence global health model used nationally and internationally to address violence. Males and African Americans are affected by violence and negative health and social outcomes, injuries and homicides, incarceration, and the community is economically impacted. When funding is available in areas impacted by violence, organizations such as U-Turn has a positive impact on violence. U-Turn utilizes an outreach case management program staffed with individuals with similar lived experiences to engage those at highest risk of being victimized or impacted by violence. We call them credible messengers. Data from our last evaluation shows the impact case management when using credible messengers. This data is from 2020 to 2021, shows 12,207 hours of case management by case managers, which is 77.2% of U-Turns participants would reach out to their case managers before a conflict escalated, and 100 community conflicts mediated that could have escalated into gun violence. There were 100 firearm incidents prevented, which would have caused injury or death, resulting in a cost savings of $70 million to $100 million. One shooting with injury cost $703,000. One homicide cost $1 million. This data is composed by Dr. Sass and Wakefield of the University of Nebraska. Based on this data, it is vital to have funding available to support this work because of the funding helps expand the footprint of the work and the impact. We've been doing this work in Omaha for a little over 8 years. We've provided wraparound services to families impacted by violence. I'm a pastor in North Omaha, and I've conducted many funerals for individuals and families that were impacted by gun violence. And seeing the need at that point in time, and then not having the resources to help them with the things that they need to help bury, to just help them because of the traumatization of the loss of a loved one. And we've done everything we could, use the resources that we've had to help them. But this bill will help us and other agencies and organizations to do more for those that are impacted greatly by violence in our community. We support this bill that Senator McKinney is presenting, and we hope that you would consider it very strongly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here and for the work you do for your community.
Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Additional proponents?
Hi, I'm going to be reading a collective letter of support for LB 1225 and North Omaha Community Partnership. We, the undersigned individuals.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but we would love to get your name.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Nadia Spurlock.
And will you spell that for us?
NADIA SPURLOCK.
Thank you.
We, the undersigned individuals and organizations, write to express our wholehearted support for LB 1225. The devastating impact of gun violence reverberates throughout our communities, leaving families shattered and communities damaged from the aftermath. Each loss to life represents a profound loss to our community and society, and the ripple effects of such tragedies are immeasurable. In the wake of these acts of violence, the North Omaha community has been extremely fortunate to consistently have North Omaha Community Partnership to look to for providing timely and effective crisis intervention services to fulfill the immediate and long-term emotional, psychological, and practical needs of these families that are outlined in the bill. To support LB 1225 is to support crisis intervention and healing through the wraparound services North Omaha Community Partnership offers, including but not limited to their rental assistance program, their diaper and wipes program, their Bridge the Gap mental health program, and their emergency pantry and clothing services. To support LB 1225 is to support violence prevention through the temporary and permanent relocation assistance that North Omaha Community Partnership provides, the culturally competent security North Omaha Community Partnership coordinates to be enforced at high-profile funeral services, and the mediations North Omaha Community Partnership undertakes to assist in alleviating core conflicts in the community. Finally, to support LB 1225 is to support communities experiencing violence, as well as the organizations doing the work to address these situations on a daily basis. This aspect of violence intervention and prevention is very necessary. These resources and your vote are vital to the effective continuation of this work. The following organizations and individuals support this statement and North Omaha Community Partnership: North Omaha Collective, Hope of Glory Church, Encompass Omaha, Omaha Together One Community, Bridge Family Resource Connector, Church on Purpose, Center for Holistic Development, the Empowerment Network, Code Z Outreach, Bethesda Temple SDA, One Omaha, the Omaha Black Police Officers Association, the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Greater Omaha Chapter, Heart Ministry Center, Carla Dish, Director of Community Corrections, Creighton University School of Law, affiliation provided for identification purposes only, and Christopher T. Rogers, Douglas County Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Additional proponents? Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Wyshell Davis, Wyshell spelled Y''S''H''A''L'', Davis, D-A-V-I-S. And I am a proponent of LB 1225. And I urge the committee to advance it because it would appropriate $2.5 million to serve a disenfranchised, suffering community. This money is a need and it has nothing to do with greed. Wealth inequity and inappropriate behavior going unnoticed are the two most fundamental problems leading up to violent crimes in our communities of color. Wealth inequity that comes directly from a system designed to have populations of the haves and the have-nots. Inappropriate behavior that stems from hundreds of years of oppression, outright disrespect, and abuse. When I hear folks discussing this Black on Black crime that exists in North Omaha, other communities across the nation, the first thing I think is, duh, people are like, where is it coming from? Why is it happening? Well, it's a direct ramification that came out of physical slavery, and it still persists today because there's no atonement for the mishandling of this population. Has anyone heard of generational trauma that comes from historical trauma? Well, if you haven't, recent scientific advances in the study of epigenetics and psychology show more and more clearly how traumatic experiences shape the lives of not only the people who experience them, but also their children and children's children. Blacks, historically speaking, were taught to hate themselves during physical slavery. They were forced to beat and kill one another. And I'm unaware of another group of people treated like this for hundreds of years. Are you? I just don't know of another group. In Nebraska, Black people are 17 times as likely to die by gun homicides as white people, compared to 10 times nationwide. The impact of violence is beyond just physical injury. It affects the mental and emotional well-being and creates social and financial strain for the victims and their families. NOCP, North Omaha Community Partnership, it's a new, but it's a trusted nonprofit in North Omaha that has shown up for this community in a big way with so few resources. They promote crime prevention, conflict resolution, suicide prevention, and crisis intervention. They offer community resources such as crisis assistance, food pantries, household cleaning supplies, and community fees. NOCP is the only organization that I know of in Omaha that offers everything that this bill wants to support. And people have mentioned the whole wraparound services as it relates to relocation assistance. I'm aware of a lot of young men in North Omaha who needed relocation assistance and couldn't get it. And now they're the LWOP population in the penitentiaries. So something else I like about this organization is that they advocate and they celebrate the individuals from the community who are excelling despite the many traps set for them for a lot of their annual events. Tamika Meese, the ED of the NOCP, is a professional with more than enough lived experience to address the ills festering in her community. The jails are already overpopulated. The mental health centers are few. This community is in dire need of help. So I ask that you allow the $2.5 million to come to the community if you want fewer deaths, fewer jail sentences, healthier families that create healthier communities. So I'm here to ask that you give us a fighting chance in North Omaha and those other tracks that were mentioned. So we can, reduce this overpopulated penitentiary system that you all have, where the numbers are just ludicrous and no one's really taking into consideration what's happening in these communities, why gun violence is so prevalent. Mass incarceration has just dismantled the Black family in North Omaha. Men are missing from the homes. You don't have men in the house. You don't have big brothers. You don't even have little brothers because now all the juveniles are locked up. When I look at my son's population, the kids he went to school with, I mean, if you guys were to collect data on these children, the majority of them have ended up dead or in jail. And I don't really blame that on the youth as much as I blame it on the leadership. It's like something has to happen in this city to correct what has gone unnoticed and ignored. I mean, and I think a lot of people don't care about it because it's not affecting your families. And if it weren't affecting your families, maybe, somebody would think to do something creative. So I'm glad that Senator McKinney proposed this $2.5 million to address these issues. I've witnessed families have to spend $10,000 to $15,000 on funeral services, money that they were trying to save for their family, maybe for someone to go to college. But instead, someone got shot. Then the money had to go to funeral services. Now this whole family, that was all the money that family had, period. I'm done, thank you.
Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
I appreciate it. Thank you for
I
listening.
apologize for being gone so long. I had a bill that went long in another committee.
Yes.
And are there other proponents for LB 1225? Welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name is Lenesia Valentine, spelled Lynasia, Valentine spelled Valentine. Okay. So I'm here to testify on behalf of the Legislative Bill 1225. Things I've seen that leads me to be in full support of this bill are the works of North Omaha Community Partnership. I've witnessed crisis interventions, emergency food assistance, funeral assistance, and essentially wraparound services offered to those in need. To be more specific, I've seen families suffering from gun violence being placed into emergency shelters due to their homes not only no longer being safe, but due to their homes being crime scenes from the loss of their loved one. I've seen funerals be planned. I've seen families stress over funeral costs, and I've watched their faces as that stressor slowly drifted away. I've seen mothers pick up diapers to also leave with food for those same children who were hungry. I've seen mothers come in for coats for their children who were uprooted from their homes in order to get away from domestic abuse. I've seen events for Christmas gifts that offered a sense of belonging and a hot meal. I've seen community engagement on a large and inspiring scale. I've seen genuine mental health support and resources be given. I've seen lives be saved through divine intervention. So again, I say I'm in full support of LB 1225, and I look forward to what is to continue and what is to come next. Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next proponent, please. Welcome.
Hello, my name is O'Shea Hurd, spelled Oshayheard. I'm here in support of LB 1225. I've been volunteering for North Omaha Community Partnership for a while. I've seen them stop violence. I've seen them help with I've seen them help with pretty much a lot throughout the community. I've seen groundwork. I've seen the charity work. I've seen Tamika Meese literally cook plates to fund her organization and to help the community. And I've seen them help with utilities and people with who has things cut off and things of that nature. I've seen them help with funerals. I've seen them stop violence at funerals that was going to happen. I actually helped with a lot of that stuff. And I'm in full support of the bill, and hopefully you guys make a good decision.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next proponent, please. Are there any other proponents wanting to testify? Seeing none, or there is one. Are you a proponent? Yes, welcome.
Hi, guys. How you guys doing? My name is Brian Riley, Bryanriley. I am here in support of Senator McKinney's bill. I'm actually the owner and founder of Riley Protection Group, the security company that provides services to funerals. So I serve right next to Tamika Meese. And just kind of, I didn't prepare anything, so I'm just kind of speaking from the heart. And I watch families crumble over caskets. I watch people lose their hearts, lose their minds. And I watched Tamika take on that challenge. That's major to me due to the fact that there isn't anything else like it. I spoke with the police chief a while ago and asked him, why don't we have something like that for upticks in violence and things like that? And he just had no guidance. But I prayed over the years, and then something like this come up, it's just crazy. So I'm in full support of it. As one of the individuals came up here and he said that he spoke on credible messengers. I'm a credible messenger. I'm also one of those ones that from lived experience can take what I learned in the streets and apply it to what I do in my job. That's what makes me so special at what I do. There's a major threat when you're talking about these funerals for retaliation, and my approach to the job is to just kind of get in front of it and disrupt it, as I have a relationship with both sides. Tamika Meese has put me in the craziest position to where I feel like I found a lot more purpose, because not only am I serving on my security in my security company, but I'm doing other outreach work. I have not an organization, but a new company, a new position in my company coming called Violence Interrupters, due to the fact that everything that Tamika Meese and 360 has dealt with over the years with violence at football games, basketball games, and September Fest, whatever you could think of, just to get in front of the violence. I just want to be a part of the solution. So what I've seen from Omaha Community Partnership has been amazing, and I really feel like that, it's a no-brainer that she should be allocated funds for what she does. And I'm just here in full support of her and full support of 360, and I think you guys should take it in consideration. So.
Thank you. Other questions? Senator Dover?
Yeah, what do you think the top causes that causes the violence to flare up? What are the main reasons? I mean, some of the main reasons you see that happen.
Say that one more time.
What are the main reasons, like, you see violence flare up? Like, where else do you have somebody shooting at somebody or those kind of things?
Some of this stuff, like her wraparound services, is deeper than just the gang intelligence part or the intervention part. I think some of this stuff, when it happens, it happens and it spikes pretty fast. But the cause of it, I think the lady that came before this, Shell, she was up here and she said a lot of this stuff is generational. You know, some of this stuff is just people running into each other after not seeing each other for a while. That could be what it is. A lot of it's just gun and gang violence, you know. And we all got a special approach and being intentional when it comes to serving these individuals. So to answer your question, I think that was a curveball thrown at me a little bit, but violence, I think everybody would agree, violence can happen anywhere. It happens everywhere. It's just, how do you address it? You know, what's in place to stop it from going further? And organizations like Omaha Community Partnership and the partnerships that she has, like myself and others in the community, we can get in front of that stuff. We have very unique relationships with these individuals that are on the streets committing these acts. So we know how to get in front of it and stop it so we don't have further assaults. And that's also working with OPD and just all around collaboration.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next proponent. Anyone else? Welcome.
Hello, my name is Jamila Eves, Jamilaeaves. I am here in full support of Bill 1225. As I have been a member of, a volunteer with the NOCP, and I've seen life-changing things happen, a lot of moving pieces to the puzzle. As I've grown up in North Omaha and the community, I haven't seen the resources like I have with the North Omaha Community Partnership. Also, I went through a family crisis, and North Omaha Community Partnership was in my corner. If she could have done more, she would have, but with the limited resources, she did all she can do. So just being there and being present, I am full support of this bill and the magnitude of what it will bring to the community.
Thank you. Other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Next proponent. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hi, everybody. My name is Nika Johnson. That is Nicka Johnson, Johnson. Honorable members of the hearing committee, I stand before you today to advocate for LB 1225, which appropriate funds to the Nebraska Commission on Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice. This bill is not just crucial for the effective functioning of our law enforcement and systems, but also present an opportunity to address systematic issues that impacts our communities on a day-to-day. In supporting this bill, I urge the allocation of resources to the program within the community and those in the community. Me personally, I grew up in a fatherless home with a single parent of teenage pregnancy at the age of 16, and I was able to overcome that. There's a lot of people that look like me that may not have made it out. And a lot of that is because of the inherence of generation trauma, generational type of generation that, you know, people are constantly in survival mode. Within that, you know, I have had so many families incarcerated. I've seen a lot of violence and a lot of lack of resources that people have. I myself own a company called Budget to Success that helps bridge the economic gap by teaching the importance of financial literacy. And within that, I see it on a day-to-day basis of a lot of people not having funds, of may need to be relocated, of if there is a funeral, you know, you gotta have a fish dinner at the local social hall. You are advocating for GoFundMe's just because funds are short. And within that is you can't even properly breathe and you can't even properly grieve in that process because money is limited within that. So within that, I just wanted to come up and show my support and how imperative it is to recognize, you know, in supporting LB 1225, and together how we can be able to pave the way for more equitable and prosperous futures for all Nebraskans. Therefore, I wholeheartedly endorse LB 1225 and urge the passing, the betterment of our state. And thank you for your consideration. And at this time, I want to open up for any questions.
Other questions from the committee?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next proponent. Last call for proponents. Seeing none, is there anyone in opposition? Seeing none, anyone here in the neutral capacity? Seeing none, Senator McKinney, you may close.
Thank you, Chair Clements and members of the Appropriation Committee. As I said in my opening, I brought LB 1225 because I saw a need, and I've seen a need my whole life when it comes to times of crisis and families not having the resources, and entities in the community not necessarily having the resources to help those families. And I think it's I don't even look at it as an investment. I look at it as us as a body and us as a state doing our part in assisting Nebraskan families in a time of need. I think in assisting those families, we start to address those generational traumas that have gone unchecked, I believe, for forever, and has caused, for example, our prison overcrowding crisis. I think if we, in the 90s, began to address generational trauma, I don't think we have a prison crisis, overcrowding crisis. I really don't think so. I think that's why we're building and spending $350 million to build a prison, because we haven't addressed generational trauma. I don't think this is the only thing that we need to do, but I think it's part of the solution to address, the trauma. And I think no family should be standing on the side of a corner with a sign saying, "Help us, we need to pay for this funeral." Because nobody wants to go through that. I don't want my family to, and I know nobody wants their family to be standing on the side of a corner with a bucket saying, "Help us pay for my uncle or my dad's funeral," or "Help us come get your car washed so we could pay for this funeral." Or for another example is, there was a mother who kept getting her house shot up, and she had to be relocated. And luckily, Miss Meese was able to help get her relocated to Lincoln. And since then, her son has been going to school and not getting in trouble, and he's been on track since he's been in Lincoln. And that's just an example of what we could do. And that's why I brought it. It's not about an investment. I think it's just trying to do the right thing and trying to address trauma as best as possible to try to make sure we help as many people as possible. I think we spend a lot of money on unnecessary things every year. I think this is one bill that I think we could spend some money to really help people. And that's why I brought it, and open myself up to any questions. Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
We have position comments for the record. There'll be 1225. Proponents are 7, opponents 1, neutral 0. That concludes the hearing for LB 1225. And that concludes us for today. And revenue has 6 more bills.
Oh, I know.